Slaying Sunnah, Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi's concept of Bid'ah in his book Al-Iʻtiṣām, McGill University, 1999, Montreal, Canada, Asif Saif-ud-Din, Jahar. Conclusion. Shatibi's period can be characterized as one in which jurists and Sufis allowed their standards to decline, leading to their adoption of uncharacteristic positions. On the one hand, jurists were too lenient in substantiating and articulating the law, while on the other, Sufis were overly rigid and unduly demanding in its application. Their attention to religious practices, therefore, sometimes became distorted from the authentic injunctions prescribed in the Quran and the Sunna. It was Shatibi who proposed these trends by insisting on the supremacy of the Shari'ah over reason in order to resist bid'ah permeating into religion, and by emphasizing respect for the ends and the spirit of law, in spite of the fact that he himself was accused of being an innovator, someone who makes religious innovations in the religion. Al-Iʻtiṣām, which deals extensively with the issue of bid'ah, was Shatibi's response to the charges directed at him. It was also his reformulation of the concept of bid'ah on the basis of the epistemology of legal theory. By appealing to this methodology, he placed himself in the middle-of-the-road position between the two camps of his predecessors, led by Abu Bakr al-Turtushi, who dies at 474, commensurate with 1081, and Ibn Taymiyyah, who dies 728, commensurate with 1327, respectively. On the one hand, scholars had stated bid'ah applied only in cases of innovation in worship, while on the other hand, they claimed bid'ah occurred both in worship and in customs. Neither group, however, offered sufficient justification or bothered to develop a new legal or philosophical paradigm. It was al-Shatibi who synthesized the positions of the two parties by defining bid'ah based on the epistemology of legal theory. Al-Iʻtiṣām elaborates extensively on the doctrine of bid'ah, a prime concern of al-Shatibi at the time the work was written. He begins by dividing matters of pure worship from the exclusively customary. The former are taken for granted as submission, ta'abbud, to God, while the latter can be modified according to human need and consensus. He then divides the bid'ah into two types: real bid'ah, bid'ah haqiqiyya, and relative bid'ah, bid'ah idafiyya. Real bid'ah is defined by Shatibi as detrimental to the Shari'ah, in that its construction is not evidenced by textual precedent in either the Quran or the Sunnah. Such bid'ah applies unreservedly in the domain of worship, which represents God's own stipulations. Relative bid'ah, however, is defined first of all as innovation rooted in a clear textual indicant, such as in the case of congregational prayer on the night of Ramadan, and second as innovation based upon ambiguous indicants or on no indicants at all, such as in the case of habitual dhikr, which is remembrance of God expressed by chanting. Of these two definitions, which supposedly fall under the heading of worship and customs, respectively, he divorces the notion of bid'ah from muhdatha, novelty in customary matters. The latter, in his eyes, should not be regarded as lawful, since novelty in customary matters can and have changed from the time of the Prophet to the present, and even vary from one place to another. Worship, however, are certain and need neither addition nor subtraction, and therefore do not tolerate innovation at all. Accepting the prophetic statement that all bid'ah are blameworthy, Shatibi concludes that the censure of bid'ah is universal, and that qualifying it as good or bad, or defining it by any of the 5 legal norms, is intolerable. The key point, therefore, is that bid'ah pretends to the authority of the Shari'ah, when in fact it is not stipulated by Shari'i indicants. In this sense, Shatibi approached the subject in juridical rather than theological terms. Shatibi furthermore critiques the efforts by subdividing bid'ah into 5 legal norms such as wajib and mandub, and good or bad bid'ah, as a kind of innovation within innovation itself. He, however, indirectly offers an alternative legal solution by validating maslaha mursala and istihsan, juristic preference, and public interest. He sees bid'ah regarded as good and bad as different from these 2 legal arguments. Maslaha mursala and istihsan, according to him, are based on the indicants and the suitability of the Shari'ah, whereas bid'ah is not only foreign to the Shari'ah, but is also contradictory to its indicants. In addition, for him, bid'ah itself is certainly opposed to the Sunnah, which can be good and bad. When the textual evidence is lacking, the justification of cases entirely of a customary nature, i.e., not matters of worship, therefore should be based on legal argument, i.e., maslaha mursala and istihsan, rather than bid'ah. For maslaha mursala and istihsan are legally based on the indicants extant in the universal roots of the Shari'iyah. Using the concepts of bid'ah as a legal argument by implication is legally weak and paradoxical as well. Finally, we may conclude that al-Iʻtiṣām, although on the whole concerned with the whole issue of bid'ah, was primarily designed as a response to Shatibi's adversaries, who stood for excessive application of the law on the one hand and a lax attitude in applying the law on the other. Either of these two positions can run the risk of introducing innovations. Yet his work was not only meant to criticize, rather, and more importantly, it champions the Shari'iyah while at the same time respecting the role of reason. End of conclusion, end of thesis. One footnote, I will give reference to the works of Shatibi referenced, their publishers and their dates respectively. So, Shatibi's work entitled Al-Iʻtiṣām, the edition is the Muhammad Rashid Ridda version, which is in 2 volumes and published in Cairo, Maktaba al-Tijariyya al-Kubra, and no date is given. And the other book by Al-Shatibi is Al-Ifadat wal-Inshadat, that's edited by Muhammad Abu Ajfan, Beirut, and that's the Mu'assasat al-Risala Publishing House, 1983. And his book Al-Muwafaqat fi Usul al-Shari'iyya is 4 volumes. That's published in Beirut, Lebanon, Dar al-Kutub al-Ilmiyya, and no date is given. Stay tuned for many more.